Hey folks, Sam Luce here with iZotope. This is the first in a series of videos where we're going to be taking a more holistic look at compression. Compression is a tool that's often spoken about in terms of how. How do we compress? Well, we take the ratio, bring that up, grab the threshold, bring that down, tune the attack and release, but that tells us nothing about why, or specifically how the sound is going to change for any given instrument when we alter one of these settings. So if you want to know not only how to tune your compressor to achieve a certain sound, but also why, then these videos are for you. You've probably seen a million videos on what each of the controls of a compressor do. I've even made one for the iZotope channel, you can check it out up here. It's very much compression 101. These videos are applied compression. We're taking that knowledge and applying it in the context of a number of different instruments, and in order to fully utilize the information from compression 101, you have to listen. I'm going to use Nectar, Ozone and Neutron for these examples. So Nectar for the vocals, which is what this video is focusing on, Ozone for mix bus, and Neutron for everything else. You can grab free trials of these over at iZotope.com to follow along if you don't already have them. Let's just jump in. Firstly, I want to show you an example of what I would call a nicely compressed sound source. I'm going to use drums for this, as we often do, because they can demonstrate transient focus better than most. Hear the original versus the compressed version and how much more cohesion there is when compression is at play. Now I want to go to one extreme. I'm going to make the attack far shorter. The release is going to be pumping far more. I'm going to make this sound, in comparison to the first example, kind of wrong. So that one may be to your taste, that extreme form of compression. It's certainly got its place, and for the record, I actually love it. But how about this next one, where it's far less about chopping transients off and more about gently shaping the sound? Three vastly different sounds there using the same compressor in Neutron. No trickery, no fancy analog emulations, just knowing where to move the controls in order to achieve a specific sound. Know the controls, know what they do, understand their function, but in order to know compression, you need to know how to listen to your source and understand how to apply that knowledge to make the signal sound and feel a certain way. Vocals are a really great place to start because they're a prime example of the traditional reason a signal needs to be compressed. The loud parts are much louder than the quiet parts, the dynamic range is too great, and typically that's where people stop the explanation, isn't it? They say, I want to compress this because I want to reduce the dynamic range. Well, what we really mean to say is that when someone listens to this track, they're not going to be able to hear some of the words because they're too quiet. And some of the louder sections are going to take the listener out of the experience of the song. Everyone knows when something is too loud. You don't need trained engineers' ears to know when a word or phrase is too loud. So what we're really doing here is making sure that every word, every syllable can be heard. I've got a few different examples here, a couple of different voices in different settings on different songs. We're going to start off with some reasonably kind of basic settings, and we're going to listen to how altering one setting is going to change the sound. Let's jump in. So here I've got a vocal, it's a female vocal, it's on a kind of garage rock style track. Let's just take a listen to it with the compressor off. So I'm just going to turn my compressor off and just take note of the issues that are there. Some words are very loud, some words are very quiet and get kind of lost. I've got the vocal on one fader and then basically everything else on another fader. And it's important that when we're compressing, we're listening within the context of a track, but sometimes just to make things a little bit easier to kind of zone in on, I'm going to bring the level of the track down, maybe all the way, just so we can really focus in and then bring it back into the mix and just hear exactly what we think we're hearing. So let's take a listen to this as is, no compression whatsoever, and just hear how some of the words poke out and some kind of get a little bit lost.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
So if I bring my compressor onto the screen, we can see the settings that I've got. Now I've got the ratio at around 4:1. I like to use 4:1 as kind of a starting point because it's not enormously aggressive on a single instrument. Attack is up at around 70 milliseconds, so not chopping off transients too much. It's allowing things to kind of come through a little bit. Release is at 134, about double what the attack is. And importantly, I've got makeup gain on auto, so it's automatically going to raise the level to counteract the level lost from compressing. Let's just bring this threshold down a touch and notice when we're starting to compress and when that compression is starting to take place. We're going to hear it on the louder sections first initially, and then we'll alter some of the other settings.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
Okay, so by bringing that threshold down at the settings we've got, we're just reining things in and making it so those louder sections are not really jumping out. Just take a little listen to an A-B before it first.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
So what's happening to those louder sections is we're just reining them in. We're just bringing them down a touch. And because the attack is set to 70 something milliseconds, it's just allowing the initial transient to kind of come through and it's not clamping down too much. If we wanted to clamp down a little bit more, we could bring that attack setting down. So we're going to be hitting the first parts of the words straight away. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to bring the track down a touch just so we can kind of hear that vocal and we'll hear the initial attack, the initial kind of chopping off straight away. If I bring this attack all the way down, just to be crazy for a moment, let's go to some fairly extreme settings. Let's bring that threshold down as well, just so we're really chopping some stuff off.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last.
It's much more aggressive. We're compressing far too much so that when the release then releases to the normal uncompressed state, there's far more of a difference. Let's just hear that in with the track and we'll hear how it's kind of just getting too aggressive on the vocal. It's just cutting off the transients too much. And that's exactly what this attack control is going to do if we allow it to.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last.
So we kind of lose the essence of the vocal a little bit. We make it so that the initial words can't really be heard. So let's just bring that attack up while we're listening to the track and just get it to a point where we're still clamping down on the vocal, but we're just allowing things to come through a little bit.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
Notice as I bring that up to too long a time. We're now not clamping down the transients enough. So I think in that 70 milliseconds kind of area was kind of a sweet spot, because we're allowing the transients to come through a touch, but we're not completely smashing everything down. So let's tune this to kind of an appropriate level.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
Okay, and now we can start to bring that threshold back up, so we're not clamping down on it too much.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last.
Okay, I think that's in a good spot. Now the ratio, as I said, is at 4:1. If I bring this down so that we're at kind of 1 point something to 1, we're not going to be compressing enough. And that's what the ratio is going to do. It's governing how much compression is actually going to take place. So regardless of where the attack and release settings are, at the point of compression, how much is it actually bringing it down? So 4:1 is going to be bringing it down a fairly decent amount. If we're down at 1.3, we're not going to notice the compression as much.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
So having it around that 3.5 to 1 kind of area, we're clamping down the transients enough, but you'll notice that previously when I had it at 1.5 to 1, it just wasn't doing enough. Compression, in most cases, especially a vocal, if you're just aiming to rein in transients a touch and level things out, it should kind of be invisible. We shouldn't hear it pumping up too much. And if we're having the ratio too high, then we're going to be really attacking things. Let's just bring it up and just hear exactly what it's going to do.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
As I just brought that back down to kind of 4:1, it just felt like we released the vocal a little bit. It just felt like it was uncovered a touch and it wasn't being squashed quite as much. So the ratio is going to be dependent on your source material, and this is going to go in tandem with the threshold as well. If you want a higher ratio, so it's compressing more, then we can bring the threshold up, or we can bring the threshold down and have a kind of lighter ratio. So the release time is about how much time it takes for the compressor to stop compressing. Now, at the moment, I've got it at 134.3. It's kind of an arbitrary number, but let's just bring it all the way down to nothing and then bring it so that it's very long and just discuss the differences. So first of all, let's take it kind of all the way down, or almost.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
So this release control is going to be very important in the bringing up of the quieter sections. The attack, the ratio, and the threshold are really important in bringing stuff down, but the release is about getting that low stuff to be heard. If we're releasing too late, if we're leaving that release to be too long, as it kind of is now at 520, then we're compressing for too long. So not only are we bringing down those loud sections, but it's not releasing to no compression soon enough. So those quiet sections aren't going to come back up. And we're still kind of compressing at the point where those quiet sections are, where they need to be brought up. Just listen to these first few words in the phrase, and I'll do it first with a long release setting, and then I'll bring the release down. Hear how at the long release setting, it doesn't bring the quiet parts up, but then at the shorter release, they're allowed to come up.
And I know now isn't the first time, and I know certainly not the last.
Okay, and then let's bring it down and just listen to the quieter sections.
And I know
When it says the first time, that's a quiet section that needs to be brought up. Just listen to that one bit. Let's zone in on that. Let's bring the release up a long way and just hear that word.
And I know now isn't the first time.
Quite low, quite quiet. If we bring that release down.
And I know now isn't the first time.
You can see that it's not compressing on the word time. This is the word time here, and it's not compressing there. But if we have the release all the way up.
And I know now isn't the first time.
It's still on the way back. And if we have that release even further up, this trace here is when the compressor is kind of releasing.
And I know now isn't the first time.
It's not allowing the whole word to come through. It's still releasing at that point. So I feel like when we've got the release setting down somewhere in that 100 milliseconds range, we're compressing and then releasing fairly quickly. 100 milliseconds is still a relatively quick amount of time to release in, and it's just allowing those quieter words to come through. So if you're struggling with quieter sections of a vocal, then your release time is really going to be important, and making it so that the compressor isn't compressing over those words, but it's releasing before those words come up. We've got auto gain on, which means that it's just going to be leveling things out. If we've got loud sections and quieter sections, the quieter sections should remain kind of untouched, but the louder sections are being brought down and the auto gain is bringing everything up. So that is what is doing the overall leveling. Let's just tune this compressor a little bit more. I think we could do with bringing the threshold down slightly, and then we'll move on to a vocal that has some very different issues.
And I know now isn't the first time. And I know certainly not the last. What goes around comes around, goes around comes around again.
The whole thing just feels a little more solid, a little more leveled, and that's exactly what we're going for when we're compressing a vocal. Now this next one is compressing for a different reason. The actual vocal is all pretty level as it is. We're really just compressing kind of for tone here. There's not many words that are too quiet or any sections we can hear too loud or not loud enough. Now I've brought down the backing track just a little bit. Let's bypass this and just hear what's going on. I've got two different kinds of compressors that we can try here. Full disclosure, I've got an EQ here as well, which is just taking out a little bit of low end. It's not doing a massive amount, but as I bypass this, it is in fact taking that out of the chain as well. But I've not got any kind of EQ boosts or low end boosts going on. So the first one that I've actually got muted at the moment is the ratio is at around 4:1 again. The attack is fairly long and the release is kind of matched to that, it's kind of midway. And then this compressor, the threshold is far lower down. We're attacking far quicker, but we're not compressing anywhere near as much. And this is the one that I'm kind of favoring. This one is far more like the previous example, but this one is, to my ear, working a bit better here. So let's mute the first one or take it out of the chain, and this second one, we're just adding a little bit of bite, a little bit of aggression, a little bit of kind of character, and it's adding a little bit of tone as well. So this is with the backing track down a touch. Once we kind of familiarize ourselves with it, then I'll bring it back in. So without first.
I saw a photograph printed in black and white of a face that followed a path filled with crinkles and wrinkles of heavy days, lovely nights, and that's why I gotta run sometimes.
Okay, so on this one, we're not really allowing the compressor to release all the way at any point, and that's partly due to the way that the phrases kind of work, but we're clamping down on stuff and we're making it a little bit more aggressive, a little bit almost kind of more spitty, you know, and we're doing that by attacking very quickly. The attack is down at 1.9 milliseconds, so not far off instant really. And then the release is relatively quick, so about 25 milliseconds. So we're really clamping down on stuff and we're just making the compressor just kind of do that. It's just going up and down quite quickly. But because we've got the threshold down pretty far, we're doing that often. We're doing that on a lot of the vocal, and the low ratio, This compressor is all about just leveling stuff. It's not about saying that word is too loud, that word is too quiet. It's about overall just bringing the whole thing together. And I think it works well. So if I bring this backing track up to kind of the normal level, then we'll take the compressor out and then bring it in. And you'll hear how we're just adding a bit of tone, a bit of aggression, and a bit of character to it. So before first.
I saw a photograph printed in black and white of a face that followed a path filled with crinkles and wrinkles of heavy days, lovely nights, and that's why I gotta run sometimes.
Just adding a bit of life, a bit of spice, a bit of aggression. Let's try the first compressor, which is more how the previous song was set, and just hear how it's not really achieving the same thing. So with it off first.
I saw a photograph printed in black and white of a face that followed a path filled with crinkles and wrinkles of heavy days, lovely nights, and that's why I gotta run sometimes.
It's compressing, yeah, it's leveling stuff out, but it's not adding that aggression. It's not adding the control that we have on this second compressor. So two very different ways of compressing something. And I'll be the first to say that often with compression, when you A/B between two different settings, the settings can be kind of subtle, and it can be a case of, let me hear that really closely and hear what's actually going on. But when you listen to it on a holistic level, when you listen to it overall and kind of step back, having something like the second compressor there that was aggressive and spitty is what works for this track, because it's quite a fast-paced track vocally, and to me that's just adding the aggression. So in the first song we had something where we needed to bring up those quiet words and bring down the loud words, and in the truest sense of compression, reduce that dynamic range. But in the second one, it's more about overall tone shaping and just clamping down on stuff and just making things a little more aggressive and a little more controlled at the same time. I hope that's given you some insight into how we can approach compression for a vocal, but not only that, how each control actually alters the sound of the vocal. There's no one golden setting that's going to work on every single vocal, but if we have the knowledge of how each parameter is going to affect the voice, then we're far better equipped to make decisions, turn knobs, and get a great sound. When we brought that attack down, we were just clamping down on stuff, and that release is so important for the quieter sections. In a song where you have bits that are too loud and too quiet, then that release control really is going to be of paramount importance. Next up, we're taking a look at drums and seeing how we can either shape transients and chop stuff off, or kind of leave transients alone and just add some room, some depth, and some overall sustain to the kit. So I'll see you there. Take care.